We are going to be taking a look at how we can learn Flexbox using the Chrome developer tools. So first, let's head over to the written tutorial. So we can just go in the search bar and type CSS Chrome, and that's going to bring it up. And this is going to give us a jumping off point for the Stackblitz tutorial. So we can scroll down a little bit, and this here is the first Stackblitz demo that we're going to be using. All right, so to give us a starting point, what we've done is we've created both the CSS and the HTML within one index.html document. And what we see here is we have a main element, and that has 3 div elements inside it. The main element is the Flexbox container, and the divs are the Flexbox items, and you see them colored over on the right-hand side here. And the way we're styling them is we created some baseline styles around the main element, and so it's got display set to flex. That's what makes it a flex container. It's got a padding of 1 rem, a background color of gray, and a height of 400 pixels. We've also created a baseline style for each div element. Those are colored in here, and you see that the margin is set to 1 rem, and that is what provides the spacing around and between the items. And we have the minimum height set to 100 pixels, the padding set to 1 rem, and the width set to 100 pixels. So these are each 100 pixels wide, plus the padding, of course. We have given each Flexbox item its own unique style, and so the first one has a background color of red, the second one has a background color of yellow, and the third one has a background color of aqua. And the third item has a minimum height of 300 pixels. The second item has a minimum height of 200 pixels. And for the first item, we're just using the default min height that's applied to all the div, and that is 100 pixels. So now that we have our setup, we can start experimenting. And the first thing we'll do is we'll open this up in a new window so that we have a clean slate to work with. To open up the Chrome developer tooling, go ahead and go to the 3-dotted menu here, and then go down to more tools, and then go ahead and click on developer tools. It opens up automatically on the left-hand side for me, but if it's not doing that for you, just go ahead and click on the 3-dot menu right there, and then just select this option, and that'll open it up on the left-hand side for you. And now that we have our tools, we want our main element selected. So we'll just go ahead and select one of these, and we'll go over here to our elements and click on main. And what you see down here next to the display, which is set to flex, is a little Flexbox editor. And if we click on that, it opens up all of the Flexbox properties and the corresponding values that each property can be set to. And that's what we're going to be using to play around with in order to learn Flexbox better. And just so that we can see that Flexbox is indeed being applied, if we turn off the display like this, we can see that the display now returns to block. That's indicated by the browser style sheet down here. And we can now see that all of the items are running from top to bottom in the normal document flow. And they're also overrunning our container, and that's because we set the height of the container to 400 pixels. So if we switch that off, we now get the container wrapping all of the items inside it. So let's go ahead and turn the Flexbox layout back on, and then activate the menu. Whoops. Switch it back on, and now it's in the orientation that I wanted. Let's go ahead and play around with align items first. We can see down here that if we hover over each item, we get a tooltip indicating what the value for the item is. And currently, we have the align items set to stretch, and that is what the normal is indicating up here. So if we select this item, we see that nothing changes here. However, if we select one of these other items, for example, center, we see that they're all centered along the cross axis. And just so you know, the cross axis runs from top to bottom like this, and we see that each item is centered on that axis. And that is what align items does. It aligns the items along the cross axis. So let's go ahead and try the next one, which is flex start. That puts them all at the top, and flex end puts them all at the bottom of the cross axis. Stretch is what we started with, and baseline aligns all of the items to the baseline. And you can see here that since we no longer have stretch, all of the items are assuming the minimum height that we gave them. And that is because we're telling them not to stretch and to align themselves along the cross axis. One more thing to keep in mind when working with align items and justify content is that currently, since flex direction is set to row, as we can see up here, the cross axis is running from top to bottom or vertically, and the main axis is running from left to right. Now, if we change flex direction to column, we see that the cross axis is now running horizontally from left to right, and the main axis is running from top to bottom. And so when we play around with the align items values, we see that they're actually now being used in a left to right manner. So flex start will put them at the beginning, and center will center all of the items in the middle of the container. And the container, of course, overflows because we have the height set to 400 pixels. And if we switch that off, all of the items will fit within the container like that. All right, next let's take a look at justify content. And we can see here that normal and flex start is the same thing. All of the items are put at the start of the container. The center value for justify content puts all of the items at the center of the container. The flex end puts them all at the end. The space between takes the amount of space left over, divides it among the items in between them. And so you can see there's a certain amount of space here and a certain amount of space here. And the space around takes all of the leftover space, divides it up equally among the inside and the outside of each item. And so you can see you have more items between than you have on the outside here. And lastly, space evenly just takes all of the items and spaces them out evenly across the container. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the justify content is being applied on the main axis, which runs from left to right. However, if we change the flex direction to column, we now see that it's running from top to bottom. And of course, that changes the layout feature of justify contents. It's now laying out all of the items on a main axis running from top to bottom. Another thing to note is that we turn off the height here so that the container wraps all of the items, and we see that they all fit. And if we try to play around with the values here, we see that nothing changes. And that's because they're all basically shrink wrapped inside the container, and the container doesn't have enough width. However, if we go in here and change it to say 1400, we can see that they are now being laid out according to the justify content semantics. And so we can go ahead and change values and see that the justify content Flexbox algorithm is being applied appropriately. The next Flexbox property we're going to look at is align content. And align content works a little differently. So we are going to use a new demo for this. It's called Demo2. It's linked in the description below if you want to open it up in a new tab. And what we've done in this is we've made the Flexbox items wrap, and we've changed the width and the height of each item. And so if we look at our main styling here, we can see that Flex wrap has been set to wrap. The height has been set to 100 vertical height units, and the width is set to 400 pixels still. For each div, we've set the height to 100 pixels and the width to 100 pixels. So each item is now square, and we've removed the height from all the items, as you can see here. So let's go ahead and open this up in a new window just so we can get a clean environment, and voila, there it is. So since this is a new window, we need to go ahead and open up our tooling. So we'll go ahead and open that up. I just pressed Control-Shift-I. On my Mac, if you want to do it via the menu, you can of course go up here and go to More Tools and then go down to Developer Tools. And that'll also tell you down here via the keyboard shortcut what the keyboard shortcut is on your computer. So the first thing we need to do is get back to our main element. So we'll go ahead and just select one of the divs and click on main, and then we can open up our tooling. Okay, so we have that, and we see that align content has its default value of normal, which is the same as stretch. And since we have the flex wrap set to wrap, we see that we have the first two divs on the first line, and then it wraps because we don't have enough width. And so the third item has been placed approximately in the center of the container when the align content is set to stretch or normal. Now, if we change this to say space between, we see that all of the space along the cross axis has been put between the items. And if we change it to space around, the semantics are approximately the same as for justify content and align items. And if we change it to flex end, all of the items have been moved to the end. Flex start, all of the items at the start, and center, all of the items in the center. And so that's align content. The last thing we're going to talk about is flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis. And we've created a different demo for this because this is something that we can't use the Chrome developer tooling to illustrate. And the only difference here between the other demos is that we've set flex grow on item 1 to 1. And what that allows item 1 to do is grow beyond its initial width of 100 pixels. And so we can see that item 2 and item 3, they are keeping the width of 100 pixels, and item 1 is expanding to fill up the rest of the Flexbox container. And since this is primarily focused on the Google Chrome developer tooling to learn Flexbox, and also since there's a lot of other really good YouTubes on flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis, we're going to stop here. If you want to know more about those, I've linked to a very good tutorial in the description and in the written tutorial. And so please go ahead and take a look at that YouTube if you'd like to know more about this. Like and subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful day.